Hello and welcome to a really dead easy solo power hammer scrapper. Now you've already seen by the pictures on the intro what this build is for and what it's not really for. You can feel free to tinker with it how you please to make it adaptable. That's what I do, but the aim of this is really just to make the PvE world nice, easy, a breeze, comfortable. You can enjoy yourself without entering into too much of a panic. And I'm doing that not so much by looking to survive every encounter and have it last for 10 or 15 minutes, but rather to use power to blow them away. All right, let's get straight on with the armor that's involved. And here we have everything is Berserkers is what you're looking for. That's the power setup. Everything in Berserkers, that's power, precision, and ferocity. Now for the runes, I've chosen Superior Rune of the Ogre, and I'd like to explain why. You can alternatively go for the meta, which would be Rune of the Scholar. Points 1 to 5 of the Rune of the Ogre and the Rune of the Scholar are exactly the same. It's point 6, that's the difference. Now in point 6 in Rune of the Scholar, you would get 5% damage while you're above 90% health. As soon as you drop below 90% health, you lose that 5% overall damage increase. Now the problem with that is that when you're using a power build, it's not tanky, it's not built to be able to withstand and stay at full health the whole time. You're relying on crushing enemies quickly despite your health decreasing. So I kind of find that it's rare that in any kind of prolonged battle that's more than one-on-one that I'd be able to stay above that 90% mark and keep that 5% overall damage. So by me going Rune of Ogre, I am sacrificing that 125 ferocity. It's true. What I'm getting in place is a guaranteed overall 4% damage increase no matter what. No matter what my health, no matter what else is happening, that won't go. And that's overall, not just ferocity, overall damage. Second thing I get is this summoning of a rock dog while in combat. I'd recommend trying it. Just try it and see if it isn't much better than you ever thought it would be. In terms of its speed, getting to where it is, in terms of taking aggro, in terms of actually there's been many times when I've just let the dog do its business and take care of some minor enemies that are around. You'll be surprised with your power build what the rock dog can do. However, do feel free to change the rune for whatever you think is best for you. And I'll say it again, if you'd rather go with more of a meta build, you'll want Rune of the Scholar. I'm just explaining why I go for Rune of the Ogre. I really enjoy this build. Okay, so that's the armor. To weapons now. You still want the Berserker weapons, so power, precision and ferocity. I'm going for hammer. I'll go through the skills later to explain why I think hammer's best for the scrapper build when you're going power, that is. The sigils I've chosen, the first is Sigil of Force, just standard really for a power build, that you have that constant 5% damage. And of course with our build, with the runes I'm using, I'm getting a constant 4% on top of that even when my health drops. This Sigil of Force also plus 5% constant no matter what else is happening. The second sigil I'm using is a little bit controversial, but outgoing damage is increased by 3%. Now that's a standard. It's constant 3% no matter what else is happening. It is not conditional on anything else. So my sigils are boosting my overall power output by 8% no matter what. But at night it increases by an additional 7%. Now the day-night cycle obviously is not like our day-night cycle. It's pretty swift, and if you were doing a dungeon or something like that, it's very feasible that you could have shifted into a day-night cycle without even realizing it. But to then find that your standard damage has been boosted by a flat, not 8%, by 15%, just because the night cycle has come in, is an amazing thing to do. And generally in PvE, you don't normally worry about whether you're going out in day or night. hence the extra 3% flat extra damage to the 5, making 8 is good. But imagine if whilst you're out doing your story, your missions, your bosses, all these kind of things, that suddenly your overall output of damage is boosted by 7% for no other reason than the time has changed from day to night. I think it's fantastic. However, feel free again to change that second sigil. Keep the sigil of force, whatever you do. But if you don't like the idea of the sigil of the night, do feel free to change that for one that you prefer. Now, my offhand, or rather my second set of weapons, I've gone for pistol and shield. I must say at this point, pistol and shield is a condition damage weapon set. Okay, I've got them in there just to have them in there. I do not swap to them unless I just fancy something different, or I want to use something like the daze or the pushback of the shield, because otherwise they are not optimized for a power build. This will see you using hammer nearly all the time unless you're in low level mobs and you're bored. Otherwise, stick to the hammer. Okay, let's go to the build. First of all, explosives. Okay, so you've got the 3 skills that you have no choice about if you're choosing this trait line. Damage increases here. I've gone for class cannon here. Ironic, I know, but that's exactly what you want really when you're going for a power build. Damage increases when health above the threshold. The threshold, I'm pleased to say, is 75%, not 90%. By it being 75%, you will find later on with the utilities that we've got that it isn't too hard to keep above 75%, especially when you're throwing out a couple of barriers as well, in which case your damage increase of 7% you will find very helpful indeed. For the second one, explosive temper. When the explosions are coming from your explosive entrance when you first attack, okay? You're not having to create them with bombs or anything else. Explosions grant stacking ferocity when they hit. So every time that triggers, your ferocity is stacked to a maximum of 10 stacks. So in other words, a maximum boost of 200 ferocity when it's at maximum. If you found that you are just not being tanky enough, that you're not surviving, and it's really becoming a bit too fine a point for you, switch it to this one, blast shield. Instead of every time the explosive entrance, instead of it giving you more ferocity, instead it'll give you a barrier and your vitality will jump up. In this case, I've got 15,000 vitality. As you can see, it will jump by 2,000. That's more than 10% by doing just to that, if you found yourself under a lot of pressure. I recommend not switching to that unless you find yourself with this power build just being too squishy. Finally on here, explosive entrance, again all determined by you getting into fights. Inflicts blindness when it hits, and additionally it dazes foes above the health threshold. Next one, I've gone for Alchemy. Now then, this is one that you could swap out for something else of your choice if you wanted, because this one isn't strictly speaking offensive, but it is boon inducing. It's more a defensive mechanism. I really like it, but I would understand fully if for a power build you took it out and put in something more offensive. But let me on this occasion at least show you why I've kept it in. First of all, if your health does drop to 75%, you'll quaff this lesser elixir of B and gain all of these things. Now, they don't heal you, but as your health is decreasing, as you're starting to look at your health pool and wondering, am I going to get through this? You're getting a good stack of 11.25 seconds of critical chance, extra power, retaliation from anyone that's attacking you, swiftness to get around and move out the way if you need to, and might automatically as soon as you hit that 75%. So that's one reason to go with this line, and you can't remove that one. The second one you can't remove is this, Elixir C, so that's Elixir B. If you then found yourself with 3 conditions, this would not only remove those conditions automatically, you don't need to do it, but it would convert them into boons and give you might on top of it. The third one you can't choose is heal yourself when you grant yourself a boon. So, when this triggers, you're getting boons. For each boon, you're getting healed. When this triggers, and you've got 3 conditions, you'll find that those conditions are converted to boons plus might. you're getting healed for each of those boons. In other words, this is your survival line that makes this medium class power build really survivable. You'll be amazed how survivable you can be without worrying too much at all, which is why up here I've gone for the ferocity and not for the survivability. Okay, they're the things you can't change if you went alchemy. Here's what you get. When you gain swiftness, which you do from the boons, when you gain swiftness, also gain vigor. In other words, endurance regeneration to get your dodges to get out of the way of trouble. Drink an elixir E when you're struck below the threshold. Okay, so your health has gone down below the 75%. You're really struggling. You're wondering if you're going to get through it. Your heal's on cooldown, 33%, but at that point, this will come in giving you 4¼ seconds of protection just when you need it, and a 3000 barrier. Again, like I said, alchemy is this get out of jail card trait line. If you want something more offensive, change out alchemy and put something else in. This is all about getting out of jail when you think that you're in real trouble. Combination of some health boosts, but also increased damage boons at a time when you might be able to finish them off before you're finished off. This is the get out of jail trait line. Finally, all elixirs gain reduced recharge and increased duration, and they grant might. So all the elixirs that you quaff, including the ones in your utility bar, are increased. So these ones as well are increased how long they last, they're reduced how quickly you can use them again, and they will always increase your might. Induce might, increasing your power as you're going. Your great get out of jail card is alchemy. Again, if you don't think you need any of these extra boons and profits and rescue abilities and survival bits and pieces, please just swap it out for something you find more offensive. But that's what I use. Finally, of course, in order to wield the hammer, you need Scrapper. Gyroscopic acceleration. Well abilities. Now all of these gyros create wells, okay, including the F5. Well abilities have an increased area of effect. So in other words, both helping allies, although this is a solo build, but more importantly, when they are damaging enemies, have an increased area of effect and grant super speed to nearby allies on their final pulse. Your function gyro also grants super speed. Now, if you don't want this increased area of effect, or you don't want the super speed, your options are to disable a foe grants you barrier. Okay, so you could say, well, this super speed is to move around, to get out of the way, take up a new position. It's not that offensive. It could well be offensive as far as I'm concerned, especially when you're wielding the hammer. But this isn't offensive either. It just grants you a barrier when you're disabling a foe. And then this final one, gain might when you have stability. Stability, swiftness, or super speed. Okay, so now we found out that we're triggering all of these wells, including the F5 function. They're all doing super speed for you, and guess what? You're now doing an extra 5% damage every time super speed is in action. That's a big boost. Not only that, but the stability and the swiftness, all of it is really good to help you get out that power attack. Finally, barriers you receive are stronger. Well, we've already looked at some barriers and when they occur, and if you felt under threat and you didn't want so much power and you wanted to drop down and have an extra barrier, this would boost that barrier. I don't think you'll need to go down there because your other barrier creating effects will be boosted by this, a 15% increase, and condition damage that you receive will be reduced by 20%. Your option to this is the stability and super speed when disabling an enemy. I don't think with what we've got here with this wells creating super speed that you need more super speed, to be honest. Every time you trigger one of these, at the end of it you're going to be getting super speed, so that's a bit mute. This last one is gain quickness when you gain might at or above the threshold, and quickness grants bonus power. It's good, but it is threshold dependent. So if you wanted to go more offensive and not have this barrier and reduce condition damage, that's the way to go. Put this applied force instead of that one. This one increased your barrier and reduced your condition damage against you. Every time you got a barrier, it will reduce it. Any barrier from any source. If you didn't need to be so defensive, go for this one instead. It will boost you on the condition that it says. Okay, that's the build. Let's have a look at the weapons. Okay, so here you can see with the hammer, with the auto thing, you've got constantly might generation and vulnerability generation. Great combination to have when you're doing a power build. Here you're stacking more vulnerability and spinning around, reflecting missiles, notice, not absorbing missiles, reflecting missiles. That means anything fired at you when you're using this is doing damage to whoever fired it at you. That's great. This one is a big smack in the face. It charges forward, it leaps forward, evades for a second, can hit 5 targets and do immense damage. This really is your main smack in the face with a hammer. It is a great thing for your power build. Here you have shock shield. Block attacks while striking foes in front of you. So you're not just standing still blocking, you are striking foes in front of you with it. And you're gaining barrier with each enemy you hit. Now you can hit 5 targets. If you were to hit all 5 in a group, you would get 213 per hit. You get over 1,000 barrier. Your barrier would be increased then by 15%, and you're doing over 6,000 damage. You're doing really well there if you use that. And then finally, ionizing an area creates a nice field, brings down lightning, damages them over time, as well as stunning them, as well as putting more vulnerability on that. It's a great skill to have. Overall, you won't miss any of the other weapons if you take up the hammer. It isn't as slow or as lugging as either the Guardian or the Warrior, if that's your worry about hammer. It's a lot faster, a lot more fluid, movement, spins, quick damage. It's a great weapon for this power build. Okay, let's have a look at the utility skills. Medic Gyro. Now, lots of people do swap it out for turret and put the turret in instead. You will still get some super speed from the turret because it's a healing skill. And then all the usual ways that you would use the turret for health would still be there. So if you really are in love with the healing turret, and many people are, and with good reason, do pop that in if that's what you like. I'm going, however, for the Medic Gyro. I like that it pops around with me. It moves when I move, doesn't stay in one place, and does everything that I need it to do. Next is my barrier-inducing gyro. Deploy a bulwark gyro to grant you barrier and redirect damage to you from nearby allies if you're in a group. Obviously, I'm going solo, so you don't need to worry about that damage coming your way. You get a pulse barrier, you get a personal barrier, and the barrier is increased, as well as super speed. Great thing to start off with and mitigate damage to yourself. Skip this one, we'll come back to it. Shredder Gyro. So this was your defensive barrier gyro, this is your attacking one. It's a shredder, attacks foes repeatedly using whirl finishers. 12 times 3,500 almost, super speed, duration of 6 seconds. It's really good to have on board. That's your damage that you don't even have to think about. You just click it, it's doing damage while you're doing all the hammer damage. You don't need to do anything else. It's got a good ratio around it, a good radius rather, not ratio. You'll find it very useful. And at the end, with the super speed you get at the end while it's on cooldown, you're doing, of course, increased damage from that. Finally, the sneak gyro. Okay, now the reason I've gone for this gyro is the sneakiness of the stealth. It's not a bad cooldown, but this stealth has enabled me to get into positions and into places really well, bearing in mind that this is a solo PvE build. Okay, so there are lots of times there are HP points and all these kind of things where you just don't want to fight, to be able to get into the places you want and out without having to worry about whether you're going to be able to cope with removing that champion in ore and all this kind of thing. Yes, you could face him down with this build without any trouble and you would win, but on those occasions when you just can't be bothered, you can use this, or you can guide a friend. A friend can come under this in your team. They will get the undercover as well, and you can be in and out of where you want to be. Grab a chest, grab whatever it is you're wanting. It's a really good utility. It does not add, I'm afraid, to your damage whatsoever. For that, you need to look at whatever you fancy from these. But as far as I don't really need it, to be honest. With everything else I've got going on, I don't need the extra damage from this. I really like it as a utility for what it does for me. But if you don't like that and you want to go for more damage, then feel free to take any of these, especially the elixir, as we are traded for those. Now then, talking of elixirs, let's go back to the B. You've seen all the other elixirs and what we're doing with them. This one, 14 seconds out of every 32. Fury, Might, Retaliation, Swiftness, and Might. Now, that sounds, doesn't it, a lot like one of the other ones that we had before, and it is. It's a lesser B, that's a full B. The reason why this is a lesser B is for no other reason than the uptime. It's 11.25 seconds instead of 14, so you're losing about a third or so of the time of that being up, although the Might is 17 seconds, same as this, just because you're using the elixir. If you decide to take Alchemy out, if you decide you don't need this escape from jail, get out of jail trait line and all its little tricks and boons and everything else, you don't want that, you want something more offensive, then don't keep this in. Take that out and maybe put in this one, the Blast Gyro. Unleash a Blast Gyro to begin a countdown to a tremendous blast. We've increased the radius of these gyros already, so it's going to do a bigger, wider blast than before. It's also an explosion blast, which means, back to this one, it will use everything in the explosion. Vulnerability, more damage for each stack of vulnerability, everything to do with the explosion. The ferocity here you will gain if you change that one out and put that one in. That is certainly a more aggressive build if that's what you'd like to do. Like I said, I really like my get out of jail cards, and I've got another one here, Elixir B, that I can throw and help someone else if I really was in that situation. I really like what it does for me as far as survivability. Okay, well, we've come to the end of the build. I really hope you find it helpful. Do tinker with it, do find what works for you. As far as solo, power, hammer scrapper, you will find this an amazing little power tank going around in the PvE dungeon lower fractals world. Tinker it with it to your heart's content until you find the exact setting you want. I hope this has been helpful. Bye-bye.